find deeply meaningful jobs, helping those in need, and also maintain an optimal level of mental and physical well-being.
The doctor talked about metabolizing the stress. Well, what does that mean in plain speak, in English? To metabolize means to process that emotional material. Although our days are busy, right? We have a lot of reports to do. We have a lot of clients to attend to. We have deadlines. So, how do we spend time processing this material? These interactions with our clients. Do we spend any time? Does anybody remember the last time you sat down and said, you know what? God, I really felt like crying. I was really afraid. I felt overwhelmed. I wasn't sure what to say or what to do. I couldn't sleep. They weren't going to see their kid, maybe lose their kid. Do we have those discussions? Because when we talk about metabolizing our distress because of those interactions, those empathic engagements, that's exactly what I'm referring to. That's exactly what the doctor's talking about. Do we process below the chin, or is it all cognitive? The dates, the names, the events, the allegations, the strategy in court, how much the opposition is a pain in the ass. Do we spend all our time with that? Do we spend any time processing below the chin? And that's the problem. We don't recognize the fact that we're trauma workers, right? Emotionally, this isn't a big deal. I've got alphabet soup after my name. I've got a PhD, for God's sake. I've got a master's degree. I've got a BA degree. I don't need to process this stuff. And that's the problem. We don't really think this touches us. We don't think that we have a need to metabolize this material. We just simply accumulate it. And we allow for that buildup. And the first persons that usually recognize this are our spouses, our partners, our intimates, our children. You seem to be different these days. You don't seem to want to engage or be close as much. You don't seem to want to talk as much. Is something going on? Something wrong? Did I do something? Usually about the second or third marriage, we kind of think, you know what, maybe there's a problem here. It's getting expensive. Damn it. I'd like to keep some of my check. We start to realize, oh my God, what's going on here? And usually what most of us do, we job hop. I know, I'll outrun VT. Maybe the second job or third job. It won't be there, right? How far do you have to go to get away from yourself? VT isn't something our clients do to us. VT is a consequence of being human and caring and being empathically open and engaging. I'm sorry, I'm moving around. My apologies, I don't mean to. VT is something that we need to recognize if we're going to do this work and do it in a healthy way, a sustainable way, in a way that does not damage self, does not injure self. If you turn to page 12 in your packet, we're going to discuss the foundation of VT to understand what's going on. You're sitting there with that human being, or standing there with that human being, right? Incredibly stressed out, distressed, afraid, angry, puzzled, not sure what to do. You're obviously witnessing and seeing the person emote, share their feelings. In some cases, act out their feelings. Maybe even countertransference. If you were to quiet yourself and listen to your own reactions, you'll realize that you're having a parallel emotional reaction. That for every ounce of fear you're experiencing, guess what you're generating? For every pound of anger, confusion, for all the anxiety you're witnessing, you're going to have a parallel emotional reaction. And once you realize that, and you realize that that's happening not once, but maybe 4 times, 6 times, by the end of the week, maybe 20 times, by the end of the month, maybe 100 times, that you're generating this emotional material and this parallel emotional reaction, but you're not doing anything with it. You're just sitting on it. You're just storing it up, as if you had a tank strapped to your back, and you're just filling that puppy. Now comes the end of the month, 6 months, a year later. What's all that stored up emotional material doing? How is that interacting with you? What is it doing to your core beliefs as they begin to change, erode, fall apart, change, shift? When we ignore the fact that we're trauma workers, because we are servicing a traumatized population, and we're doing so repetitively, over and over and over, you'll realize that those stereotypical trauma workers in our community, they've got nothing on us. A policeman or fireman may stabilize the situation, and they're in and out, they have closure. Those EMT doctors and workers at the hospital, they'll stabilize, hand off, and they're out. We're not out. We may see that person or work with that family dozens of times over the course of months, a year, maybe over a year. So our exposure to this trauma material is so much more profound, exponentially greater, but we're not doing anything about it. We're not recognizing it. We're not connecting the dots. We're just going along. But our intimates are seeing the change, are seeing the impact. You know, when you first do this work, you go home and you're talking to your partner, your spouse, you're intimate, and you're sharing your day, and you know, they're wanting to listen, and they're smiling, and they're trying to be empathic and compassionate. Initially, I stress. But what happens after that 6th conversation, that 10th? Are you finding that they forgot about something they needed at the store? Oh my God, I need butter. Again. Well, they're not able to handle or address the VT that you're bringing to them. So they're avoiding you. And we're doing nothing at work as part of our work experience, as part of our job description to address it, because it's not even on the radar. Right? This impact isn't even something we talk about. But we all live with it and we all feel it. But because we don't talk about it, guess what happens? It's my problem. I'm deficient. I hope no one sees it. I hope nobody recognizes it. Because if I start to talk about it, what's going to happen? Are they going to see me as inadequate, incompetent? Oh my God, I hope my supervisor doesn't find out. And when we don't talk about it, and we personalize it, the very next logical step is to pathologize it. Oh, I'm defective, I'm deficient. I know, I'll go get fixed. I'll come and see somebody like me and pay me once a week to talk and share their issues. And not recognize that what's taking place is not only normal and natural, but it's gonna happen. Not because there's anything wrong, not because you don't have enough alphabet soup, not because you need that second PhD or master's degree, but simply because you are empathically engaging a traumatized person and you're having a parallel emotional reaction. Indirect traumatization. In the video we just saw, we have a neurobiological adaptation to trauma. Well, that's a fancy way of saying that if you got in a car wreck, how are you going to feel afterwards? Kind of shaky, disoriented, not really focusing, not really concentrating, a little extra anxiety. Well, you've been traumatized. Well, if in doing the work, if engaging each person over and over and over again is indirect trauma, and our body is remembering the trauma in the unique way that it remembers, but we don't recognize it, it's like telling that person in the car wreck, don't worry about it. Hop back in the car and drive to work and business is normal. Business as usual. That's what we're doing. We're simply ignoring it. And we're simply saying, you know what? No biggie. No big deal. All this emotional material will just dissipate, right? If I had a glass right here and I fill it full of water, how long would it take for that water to dissipate, evaporate? A couple days? 3-4 days tops? If I filled it full of emotional material generated by empathic engagement, how long is that emotional material going to stay in that cup? 20 years? Forever? How much of us, how many of us have emotional material generated from trauma, which is synonymous with loss, that we're already carrying, that we're already bringing to the experience? Because we have our own loss history, our own trauma history that we bring to this work, right? We're not insulated from that. That's just part of the package. We're just simply adding to that unwittingly and doing nothing about it. Parallel emotional reactions. Anybody ever felt like crying after some of those engagements? Anybody not feel like crying sometimes? Oh my God, we're dealing with serious, complicated issues that are life-altering for human beings. Some of these folks may never see their kids again. If you've ever been a parent, few things are more profound than that disconnect from your child. Few things in life in the world. And you're dealing with it all the time, every day. Even if you don't read this. I've been doing these trainings now for about 6 years, thousands of folks. And what I'm realizing more and more again is, you don't even have to see the folks. I'm seeing these reactions in folks that just read about it in reports. Just read about the reports of the reports. I'm hearing about it from the guards at the front, in the reception area, from the clerks, from the secretaries. Hence the term vicarious, indirect trauma. Anything that exposes us to this material, where we care and want to make a difference, where we feel that sadness, that fear, because we're human, we can relate, because we've had kids, nephews, nieces, because we're part of the human community, we're going to feel that indirectly. And we're going to have a need to do something with it. We can no longer just ignore it. Because we're seeing the symptoms, we're seeing the conditions. But most importantly, we're seeing that our helping professional across the landscape is starting to become the walking dead after a while. They're just going through the motions. I need a paycheck. I got to pay for that car note, the house, kids going to college. But they're shutting down. Because you can only put so much material in that tank after a while. Then it's full. It's full. Honey, I can't deal with this. I'm sorry, you got to deal with this. You know, I've had a hard day at work. You start to not pick up that phone after a while as quickly when you know it's that special client. You know the one, that one you really like. You've memorized the number, you know their address, you know that client. And we're starting not to pick up that phone anymore. Because we know instinctively there's no more room in the tank. I just have enough to get dressed in the morning, to brush my teeth, to make it to work and show a reasonable facsimile of who I am or who I was. And we're seeing that over and over again in our helping profession. Because they don't recognize they do trauma work. They don't recognize they're trauma workers. We're hearing terms like, I need to take a mental health day. That's becoming more frequent. I remember when I did trauma work, I just retired recently from DCFS. Some of you may know them. I remember I used to disconnect my phone on Wednesdays. I just couldn't deal with it after Tuesday. I needed some break. There was nothing left in the tank, no room. I need to be able to get to Thursday and Friday. Because after a while, we don't realize, oh my goodness, it's the work in what I'm not doing. It's the work in what I'm not recognizing. If I were to ask you how important self-care is to you, and how many of you have concrete strategies, I dare say nobody would probably raise their hand. Because the problem with self-care is it's a good idea. That's the problem. You know where ideas go to die? Good idea list. Yes, sirree. Let's put it on that to-do list. Of course, we got these priorities, so we got to kick it down to the bottom of the list, right? Because we got these priorities. Because self-care is just a good idea. It's not part of our practice. It's not part of who we are as professionals. And it's because we lack the recognition that we are trauma workers. And we're dealing with very serious issues, and we're very caring people, or at least we were initially compassionate, empathic, wanting to make a difference, but then something happened along the way, sadly. And we know it. There's a lot of us struggling in the room, and we know it. And we're wanting to get by. We're hoping nobody notices, because we don't want to talk about it openly. Somebody may find out. Because we're not comfortable with the F word. Yes, the F word. Feelings. Oh my God, I have to have those too? I got the damn law degree. You expect me to actually feel too? But no one ever told me that was going to be part of the experience and equation, and what to do about it, and how to understand that impact. VT. The best kept secret in the helping profession, and the worst kept secret. Page 15. Any comments or questions?
Well, I know that I'm feeling traumatized talking about it. Seriously. But I think it's a great explanation. It probably explains why I have panic attacks every night when I'm trying to go to sleep and I can't identify a reason.
Incredibly common. Panic attacks, sleep disturbance, cognitive dysfunction, all of that incredibly common. I've heard it hundreds and hundreds of times over 6 years. There's nothing wrong with you or anybody else. This is a normal reaction. If you had been in a car accident, people would say, of course you're going to feel anxiety. Of course you're going to feel this distress. Of course you're going to feel disequilibrium psychologically and be emotionally focused on just danger, right? You've been in a car wreck. But when we don't recognize, when we do this work, this is traumatizing. This is traumatizing. We're feeling it. We're living it. We're just not recognizing and connecting the dots. So we're losing sleep. We're becoming irritable with partners, with intimates. We're having difficulty trusting. That's very common. Trust starts to erode. Why does trust erode? Why is it one of the casualties? We're dealing with situations that involve betrayal, cruelty, violence, over and over and over. We are empathically engaged, so it's getting through. We're generating a parallel emotional reaction. So after a while, our ability to trust starts to close, shrink. We find it difficult to trust in our personal lives. We stop dating. I got a library card. I love to read. I don't need to put myself out there because I know and I understand now what the world's like. Now I know what the world's really like. My worldview starts to change, but we don't realize it. And we're becoming different people. Not recognizing that this is insidious. It's an accumulation that's happening over time. But we're changing. We're doing things differently. If we wanted to get a little lap dog because we want a little companion, guess what dog we end up getting? A Doberman Pinscher. Because our feeling of safety starts to also erode. Because we see all this violence. We see the potential for human indifference and cruelty. And we don't realize it's getting through. It's affecting us and how we're seeing the world and how we're relating to people without realizing it. Yes?
Well, I was just going to say, I know for myself sometimes, like dealing with people day in and day out, sometimes at a certain point I get to the point where I can't handle any more crying. And I feel like a horrible human being because it's like there's not, and it's, I guess, so it's like, what do you do?
I'm glad that you're even asking. First of all, can I get a show of hands? Is she a horrible person because it's hard for me to say? Yes. Okay, these are the people that love you the most. They're right there behind you, they got your back. But the reality is, we all feel like that. And wouldn't it be great if we could talk about it? among our peers, with our supervisors, our mentors, our bosses?
Our bosses, that would be.
Wouldn't that be great if we could say, you know what? God, I really feel like I just got to